time, life, meaning, existence. Life is an acting anachronism where things bleed together. A constant clawing feeling forcing you to survive. Yet, at the same time, as we are all the key players in our own version of reality, it would appear as though you, as the main character, are incapable of dying before your time. However, others would simply cease to be around you. And this just goes on and is seen as relatively normal. The disappearance of non-main characters. I think this leads to the phenomenon known as the NPC ideology. But I'm also now recently subscribing to the idea of determinism. The idea that everything that you do was more or less predetermined, even if without necessarily assuming that there is a higher power orchestrating it. Excuse me. Even the timing behind sneezes, even the small details, such as scratching your mouth, are encoding a very specific niche into a timeline. The way that time is going right now is very much accordant to a time where things will be a very specific way, and each tiny molecule adds to it in their own way, in ways that some people will never see, in ways that may in fact have no direct correlation to what's going on in the current, but the future is then yielded, created, rendered by those actions. These small things. It's something as small as forgetting one piece of something and then having to double back. That can create a difference of a half hour or an hour. Minor platitudes. Seemingly minor anyway. And then you re-examine things. Things will be re-examined in the future, and we will see inherent truths if we desire to. We can find values in places that they had never been before, or rather, in ways that they hadn't been observed in the past. Because as a human species, as we grow, we then find answers that were things that we thought were one thing in the past and are not. We find truths and hold them to be self-evident, but also realizing that there's nothing necessarily inherent about them, even if they are. All truths must be discovered by someone, and there will be a someone in the future who will do so, as they are so driven to do. So then, what value does your current life have? In a lot of ways, you are largely a statistic. You are existing merely to be another main character's version of reality. But I believe that there is inherent truth and value in everything that you do, even if you are such a minor key player as to be yet another number who dies by the sidelines. Those are necessary people. Those people give meaning. Even the statistical outliers give meaning. Just because your name isn't in some history book doesn't mean you're not important. So I say to myself, well, what does that make me? It doesn't really matter what it makes me. It just matters that I do what I do the best that I can do it. And so I must continue to be who I am and do what I do. Not for only my own sake, but for the sake of all of humanity. We must all pull our part. We must all be ourselves. We must all be the best versions of ourselves. And to do this, we must challenge ourselves, challenge our norms, challenge what we think is true, challenge what we hold dear. And then, well, we grow. What do we grow into? We grow into a stronger version of ourselves. We grow into who we're meant to be. I am still growing. I can feel it. And that's because I don't think any one thing is necessarily true, as you may or may not have been able to ascertain from the ways that I've been speaking. I would be much more willing to test everything in my life than to try and sit back and say, this is the way this is, and this is the way this will be, because every time I try that, something changes. So instead, I'm going to say, I will ready myself for every possible eventuality, not expecting that I will then have the answers, but that I will then be more readily able to craft myself into something useful to deal with this upcoming version of reality, to be the person that I want to be and the person that other people want me to be. Not for anyone's sake, not for any particular reason, but because it is the way it is, and it is the way it should be. Even the fact that this cat is meowing, even the fact that I think this way, the fact that I have the ability to think otherwise, the fact that I have thought otherwise in the past. These are things that allow me to then further understand my own position. These are things that allow me to more truly see the opposite idea, the opposite ideology, and realize that things that I've said in the past, such as you have to fully understand the opposing perspective before you are able to make an argument against it. This is truly key, and I want to do things the right way finally, after I've been avoiding doing them the right way for so long, and I still to an extent avoid doing them the right way, because old habits die very, very hard, and I was a person who was very afraid for a very long time. And unlearning everything is a monumental task. But also, there's a certain something to be said for being able to turn the untruth into a new truth in the future. There's something to be said for, oh, I thought this way for so long, and now I'm finally able to see. It's always been that for me, hasn't it? It's always been, oh, I think this way. Oh, no, I've seen the light. Oh, no, I'm going to start changing. But this time it's actually stuck. This time I want to be a force for something actually good, something useful, something meaningful. There is no such thing as an objective truth or an objective meaning, except for what you make. So I need to make a meaning, and that's what I intend to do. By doing these small things, these small recordings. I feel that they had been incredibly meaningful at the beginning, and they are currently meaningful, but they feel less meaningful than they were at the start, because things are now slightly established. So now I need to lead to, I guess, what would be another breakthrough, or be comfortable with what appears to be little progress as I move forward, because each step is still a step, even if it doesn't feel as monumental as the first step. The first step felt like a mile.